As high earning professionals, we need to protect ourselves from lawsuits at work and lawsuits outside of work. Keep listening to find out how. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittne Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Hey, Lisha, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I love most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians and other medical professionals. Discounts on disability insurance can range from 10 to 40% depending on your situation. And there is now an A+ rated carrier offering up to $10 million of life insurance without lapse. If you are very healthy with limited to no medical issues, approval is likely in 5 minutes. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs at www.pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018.
Hey, money best friend, we want to hear from you.
That's right. We need to know a little about you to improve this podcast and ensure we give you the best content possible.
Are you a wealth-minded doctor like us navigating the challenges of money and medicine, or are you in a totally different field?
Are you in your early 30s like me or a bit older like Brittne?
Hey, I'm not that old. If you wouldn't mind, head over to the podcast show notes, click the link for the survey, and kindly fill out this super short 6-question survey.
Based on your answers, we will tailor the podcast to fit your needs. Thanks in advance for filling it out, and don't forget to leave a review.
We appreciate you. All right, Lisha. So I know that you just came back from Paris, and I just want to say that I'm a little bit jealous. I saw all of your pictures. Girl, you had on crop tops. I'm like, oh, she got the belly ring out. I saw that you purchased something. So I don't want to spill all the beans because I don't know the details. It's just like when you yield someone's life because you've been following and stalking them on Instagram. I had that type of moment. But since we're here with our podcast nation, tell the people, give me the details. How was Paris?
Paris was great. So I think I mentioned on a couple of podcasts ago that I went to Paris with my friends for the Olympics and we had a fantastic time. It was so, I wouldn't say impromptu, but it wasn't a trip that we had planned like a year in advance or anything. It was just, I was at brunch with girlfriends and 2 of them mentioned that they wanted to go to Paris because they'd never been. And I had already been thinking about going to Paris because that's where the Olympics were. And so we were like, ooh, what if we went to Paris for the Olympics? And so I started planning things. Then during the trip, it was just amazing. I did have one little hiccup in that my bag was delayed. So I was really frustrated because I didn't have luggage for over 24 hours. So that was a little frustrating. But besides that blip, the trip was fantastic. I was there with 2 of my friends, but one of them actually flew with me. The other one actually just met me in Paris. But the one who flew with me, I booked her ticket with mine because I've got airline status and, I had the airline points and all of that stuff. So it was her first time flying international and business/first class. And she had an amazing time. She was rummaging with all the buttons and like made her seat recline into a bed, and she was in heaven drinking all the champagne and like having a great time. So it was really awesome to like see her experience that. And then in Paris, we did a mix of Olympic stuff and touristy stuff. Went to the Eiffel Tower. It was great because I had actually booked us to eat lunch in one of the restaurants in the Eiffel Tower. But I don't know if you remember me talking about how my sister-in-law like gave me a recommendation for this Michelin star restaurant. And I tried to make a reservation there, but it's a Michelin star restaurant. You need to book it like months in advance. It's during the Olympics. Like, what the heck? So I actually booked a reservation for us to eat in the other restaurant. But about like a day before I left for Paris, the Michelin star restaurant called me out of the blue and was like, hey, we saw that you put your name on the wait list. We've had an opening. Do you want to take advantage of this? And I was like, oh my gosh, like what? We could eat at this restaurant. Of course, when I looked at the price of the food, I was like, okay, this is a lot of money. Like you couldn't order a la carte, at least not during the Olympics, not during that time. They only had the option for 5 course meals and 7 course meals. And let's just say it was like several $100s. And I've never spent that much money
Wow.
on dinner or lunch or like a meal before. So I called my girlfriends. I was like, y'all, do you want to do this? This is kind of expensive, but also it's a Michelin star restaurant in the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And they were like, let's do it. Let's do it. And I was like, ooh, this is what happens when you have friends with money because they just say yes to everything. But we went, ordered champagne, did the whole 7 course meal thing. And of course, it's a fancy restaurant, so all the portions are super small, but it was delicious. And we walked out full. Our table, we were originally sat in one area, and then they moved us into another area where we had literally a view of the Olympics from our table. Like we could look out the window and see beach volleyball. Like
Wow.
it was amazing. Drank way too much wine. We went to the Louvre. We saw the Mona Lisa. We did the touristy things. We went to the Olympics. We saw track and field and basketball, exciting games, events. Did a river cruise. Yeah, we did all the things. It was an amazing trip. We walked out of that saying, maybe we should make this a tradition. Like maybe we should go to the Olympics each time it's happening. So it was a great trip. I'm glad I went. Had a fun time. Spent way too much money. Drank way too much wine. But aside from that, it was great.
I am so happy to hear that you all made the most of that vacation. And although I will not be going to Paris for any Olympic visits in the near future, I do want to go to Paris. So I would love to hear all of the recommendation. Give me the itinerary because my husband has never gone and neither have I. So
Mm.
we can use all of your enjoyment and hopefully we can reproduce that and more as a solo couple trip. So, with all of the shenanigans and luxury that you experienced in Paris, I'm sure there's a money mistake on the back end of that. Especially, you said you spent way too much money. So, tell us, did you make any money mistakes in Paris?
Yes, I have a money mistake and I have a money confession.
Okay.
My money mistake is that on the way back from Paris, I had bought so many souvenirs. Well, I bought so many souvenirs and things for my family, like while I was in Paris, to the point where I needed another bag. And I always do this. Anytime I fly internationally, I usually will stuff a duffel bag, like an empty duffel bag in my check bag. So then in case I buy a bunch of stuff, I have a bag to put all of the stuff in. And that happened on this trip. So I was buying souvenirs for people, shirts and Olympic stuff or whatever. And so I put that stuff in my duffel bag. So I just said, okay, everything that I bought, I'm going to stuff it in the duffel bag and I'm going to carry that on the plane with me and I'm going to check my other luggage, right? So I did that. All my souvenirs were in there. And I flew out of the London airport because we couldn't find a flight out of the Paris airport. And Paris and London are not that far apart. We just took the high-speed train and we were there in like a couple hours. But we flew out of the London airport. And I'm saying this to say that the London airport, to me, is notorious for being strictlers when it comes to TSA. Like you can only carry
Mm.
3-ounce things. If your whatever is 3.1, they're going to flag it and they're going to throw it out. Like I know this about the London airport. And I was actually telling my friend, I was like, make sure you don't have any liquids. Like they're super strict or all that stuff. And she was like, well, do you have any liquids? And I'm like, no, because I fly through London all the time. Like not all the time, but often enough where I know do not put liquids in your bag. I was like, this bag is full of souvenirs. Well, Brittany, I forgot that one of my souvenirs was a snow globe. And snow globe has water
Oh,
and it has more than 3 ounces of water. And I was so upset because I like put my bag through the scanner and my friend's like, is that your bag over there? Because it looks like it just got flagged. And I'm like, what? What could they possibly want out of my bag?
oh,
They totally went right to the place where the snow globe was. And it was like this rose gold snow globe with the Eiffel Tower and like all this stuff and had the Olympic rings. So he was like, the guy, it's himself was like, this is really nice. And I'm so sorry to tell you this, but you cannot take this through the thing. And I was like, okay, what are my options? Are you really going to throw this away? Do I need to put it in my checked bag, go out or whatever? And he was like, well, we can mail it to you. Great. Problem solved. Just mail it to me. He was like, I'm going to warn you. It's going to be expensive. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm a doctor. How expensive could it be? The answer, Brittany, is very expensive. So my money confession is having to spend well over $50 for them to mail my snow globe to me because I made a mistake and left
oh.
it in my carry-on luggage. My money confession is that when I am traveling, especially with friends, especially internationally on vacation, I have much less of a filter when it comes to what I will spend money on. And I think that's normal. You're traveling and you're like, oh, we're out to eat. We're going to pay hundreds of dollars to eat this Michelin star restaurant, which I would never do in the States, or buying souvenirs and buying things for people and all of that. But I just found that I was like eating out a lot more, spending a lot more on like champagne that I would never purchase in the States. Ended up buying like a luxury bag, my first time buying a luxury bag because my friends peer pressure. I mean, I wanted it, but at the same time, it was like, oh my gosh. So that's my money confession is that I think when I go on vacation, I have much less of a filter in terms of what I will spend money on, and it gets me into trouble. Like I came back and I was like, okay, I need to work more shifts at the urgent care, or I need to see more patients, or we need to earn that bonus this month because the credit card, I was so terrified to even open my credit card statement because I was like, ooh, it's not looking good this time. So yeah, my money confession is that I spend way too much on vacation.
Lisha, one, it's very rewarding or comical for me. I'm sorry that you had to go through the whole snow globe situation and pay for it and pay so much money for the snow globe. But I know how thoughtful you are and like how strategic and logical you are about planning all of the things. And sometimes life just catches you off guard. And I have been there as well where they've tagged my bag and it's like something that I just purchased. Of course, it's not like the snow globe that I don't want to throw away, but it's like something that I just purchased, like literally just bought that yesterday, like a thing of lotion or some face cream or something. And it bothers me that they throw it away. I'm like, don't you want this? Give this to somebody's mama or to a homeless shelter or something. So I've never been in the situation where it's something that I've actually desired that I could not replace and had to either mail it or step out of line and put it in my suitcase or try to find my suitcase, whatever the case may be. So I'm sorry that you had that experience. I'm happy that you still have your snow globe. And when I hear you speaking about how you overspend on vacation, I recall one of our first episodes in which you talked about some of the money mistakes that you make. And what I hear sometimes is that we are who we are and we get into these habits in which we don't break the habits. I literally came off of a therapy session and I'm like, logically, I know that this makes sense, but habitually, like, I'm not doing a thing that you're telling me to
Yeah.
do. And so I'm hearing that. And what you're saying is that, like, you like to travel, you like to have the freedom and the flexibility to experience new things. But then on the back end of that, you're like, oh crap. And because you travel so often, I think in the last episode, you're like, this travel budget is being like the bucket is being depleted. So I don't know if there's some time where you can reappropriate what goes into your travel bucket and so that you feel that you can have complete freedom to do what you desire when you're traveling because it seems like it's something that really gives you joy. You're able to create those memorable experiences. And I don't want you to restrict yourself, but I also don't want you to get into trouble from overspending during your travel.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I think I struggle with this, and I know people who may be listening may not always pick this up, but I really don't spend a lot on myself aside from travel. And even when I'm traveling, I'm usually booking flights on points, hotels on points. And so, although the travel costs money, it may not cost as much as people may assume. And I'm saying this to say that I don't actually spend a lot of money. Like I save a lot of money. I invest a lot of money. I give away a lot of money. I spend a lot more money paying down debt. And I don't always splurge on myself. And my friends, my closest friends who are
Mhm.
around me a lot, they know this about me. And so sometimes it is very difficult for me to toe that line between am I spending too much on this vacation or is this a treat
Mm.
that I should allow myself to enjoy? And that's sort of what happened with the whole luxury bag experience. We were on the Champs Elysees. I wanted my friends to see that. And that's where a lot of the famous shops are, including the Louis Vuitton store. And my friends were like, let's just go in and see. And that's just, I've realized now that is not good advice. But I ended up seeing a bag that I liked, and it was so much cheaper in Paris than it is in America, like over $500 cheaper, and there's no taxes. So they were like, Leisha, if you're ever going to get a designer bag, like this is the time to do it. Like you should get it in Europe and you're at the store and you like the bag and you haven't splurged on yourself and you haven't done this. You deserve it. We're all getting one. You should do it. You've wanted one for a long time. And it was hard for me. Like I called my brother, including the time difference. They're all asleep and my brother wakes up and I'm like calling him, call my cousin. I call one of my best friends. I'm like, y'all, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I crazy? And they're all like, you should do it.
They're like, yes, I'm asleep. You are crazy.
They're like, you woke me up for this. But I did. It was like, can I afford this? Should I do this? Should I not? My cousins were like, isn't this just like one urgent care shift? If you want it, just do it. I mean, how often do you go to Europe? Apparently, it's frequently because I've been there a lot. But yeah, it was hard for me. It was hard for me. And so when you're saying like, okay, be mindful not to overspend on vacation, maybe, reappropriate some funds, I'm like, okay, that's definitely good advice. But it's for me also towing the line between like, am I allowed to enjoy some things? What's too much? Did I overspend on that Michelin star restaurant, or is that an incredible experience that I may not have very often? Eating in the Eiffel Tower at a Michelin star restaurant is pretty cool. Buying my first designer bag in Paris during the Olympics at a discounted price is like pretty cool. But then I look at my credit card statement and I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need my own therapy session. Like it's hard for me to spend so much. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think this is something that a lot of women go through. I have a client who I was recently working with, and we were talking about her money identity. And she mentioned this kind of same sentiment of, I will spend $100 at Target 10 times within 2 weeks, but I feel uncomfortable spending $1,000 on said thing, even though I know logically that they equate to the same amount. And so I wonder if the same for you. If this was a bunch of purchases that were smaller amounts, but more frequent, equating to the same value, would you feel that I am being a good steward or I'm not overspending? And I think part of that is, at least for me, when I have a large expense, how I reconcile the emotion of, oh my gosh, I just spent this amount of money on this, is that I have it. I've saved for this. I've prepared for this, and I can pay this off. So I wonder if for you, if you know, okay, this is one thing that I don't do too often. This is a memory that I am creating. And because I don't spend on myself and I have saved for it, I look at the bank account, I look at the credit card statement, and there's actually some parity. Yeah, you might be off $100, maybe even $1,000. I don't know. But you at least have prepared for it. And so you can feel responsible in that preparation, even though some of the overspending on things make you feel a little irresponsible.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, this is why I started working at the urgent care. It was like, I want to feel less guilt when I spend money.
Mm.
And the crazy thing is, I did work at the urgent care. Like, it's crazy. Like, I just got a check in the mail for like a shift that I worked, right? And so I could cover the bag pretty easily, but it still felt uncomfortable. I thought that I would feel
Mm.
differently. I thought it would be easier to spend. It's not. I guess there's this comfort in knowing that I'm not going bankrupt and that I do have money in the bank, right? But I don't know how to describe it. I think it's very similar to when people are wealthy and they're used to being frugal. For a lot of people, you accumulate wealth by not spending money that you could have spent and by not doing that
Mhm.
for decades upon decades or years upon years. And so it's hard to sort of break that habit of frugality. And for me, being someone who wants to be financially responsible, it's like, am I allowed to splurge on this when I still technically have some student loans? Am I allowed to splurge on this even if I don't have 12 months of expenses in my emergency fund? Am I allowed to splurge on this if I haven't invested $100,000 this year or whatever it is? I think it's something that I'm going to have to really reflect on. Thankfully, this is what people call champagne problems, but it still is like something that I'm noticing. Like it's hard for me to spend money. And you're right. I wouldn't feel as torn if I'm spending $300 in Publix every week or something like that, or a grocery store or whatever. But this one large purchase, this trip definitely was harder for me to reconcile, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you are who you are. And it seems like that you have to accept the duality of your identity. And I just say, embrace it, girl. You know.
Are you being a bad influence? Are you the reason why I'm
That's the
spending so much? No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate the positivity. Thank you. Thank you for not making me feel bad about spending so much money.
You only live once and you can't take it with you. And you're doing so many things that are right for your finances. I don't know. Maybe this is not the most financially responsible advice, but I think you should treat yourself. And I'm glad that you were able to have the Michelin star experience. I mean, hell, give me the recommendations. I want to live the life. And then I'm going to come back with a money mishap or a confession like, you know what, Lisha, what was your number? Because this is my number. Let's compare.
As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income. because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
All righty. Well, Alicia, we are still in this Protect Yourself series. And today you have outlined for us this content about malpractice insurance and umbrella insurance. And as I was reflecting on this discussion, I'm like, I have very seldomly thought about malpractice insurance because I'm a hospitalist. And I've always been covered by the hospital and by my employer. Even my awareness was when my husband started his private practice and I'm going through the mail and I see the bills and all of the things for the insurance. I'm like, oh, yeah, we definitely need malpractice insurance for that. Do we have enough coverage? And what does it even look like for us to navigate this whole malpractice insurance arena? So if you are like me and you were completely oblivious about malpractice insurance or are because you've always worked for a hospital or an employer who has covered you, we're going to have a conversation about what you need, why you need it, and why this is so important.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I haven't had to worry about too much in that. I've been fortunate like you that even when I do 1099 work, whether it's at the urgent care or somewhere else, that's still usually paid for by the locums company. My main job as faculty, it's paid for by the School of Medicine where I did my training. It was all paid for. But I think most of the times when I am giving talks about personal finance to residents, one of the things that they want me to talk to them about is contracts and like contract negotiation, what to look for in a contract. And that's where this whole discussion about malpractice insurance comes up. Because although I am employed and although I have malpractice insurance coverage from my locums company, that is not the case for some of the residents that I'm speaking to. They may have to cover it themselves because they're in private practice or because their employer doesn't cover it fully. And so I've had to help them navigate this quite a few times. And even when I'm getting credentialed at different jobs, they've always asked about it. And so I think I've just learned a lot over the years. But one of the things that I want to make clear is that this is something that every physician needs. And I think most physicians are like you, Brittne, and that they kind of take it for granted because it's usually like a given. Like, of course, this job is going to have malpractice insurance, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's something that we need because lawsuits happen. I think I was looking at some data is last week or week before last that said up to a third of physicians will get sued at some point in their careers. That's a pretty high number. Thankfully, the chances of you getting sued on a year-to-year basis is pretty low. And most doctors who are sued by patients or whatever, those lawsuits end up getting dropped. Very few end up even needing to be settled, and even fewer go to trial. And so there's a good chance that you're not going to have to pay anything out of pocket. But again, that's because a lot of physicians have this malpractice insurance. And so I think my first point here is that it's something that you need. And if you are somebody who is looking for a new job, or maybe you're in your current job and you just haven't really looked at the policy, I would encourage you to do so. Because technically speaking, there are two main sorts of types of malpractice insurance, right? And of course, malpractice insurance is going to cover you from lawsuits that you may encounter at work. There's two main types though. There's an occurrence policy and there's a claims made policy. And those are slightly different, and it's really important to distinguish which kind you have. The occurrence policy is more comprehensive. It's going to cover you for any lawsuit that occurs at any time that you work for that employer, regardless of if you leave the employer or not. And so if you're working at Clinic A and then you leave Clinic A, if some patient waits until after you leave to bring a lawsuit against you, your occurrence policy is going to cover you. So it's very comprehensive. It covers you for lawsuits that happen while you work for that employer and even after you leave that employer. So that's the kind you want. The occurrence policy is super comprehensive. The other kind of malpractice insurance is a claims-made policy. And claims-made policy is not as comprehensive. For the most part, claims-made policies are only going to cover you for claims that are made while you work for that employer. But it is not going to cover you for claims that are made after you leave that employer. And that's where the distinction comes from. Most physicians do not stay at one job their entire careers. And so there's a good chance, a high chance, that you're going to eventually leave the employer that you work for. And the question becomes, what happens then? If a patient waits until after you leave to sue you, are you covered? And if you have a claims-made policy, you really need to delve into that. And a lot of employers nowadays are having these claims-made policies because they're a lot cheaper, as you can imagine. And so if
Hmm.
you have a claims made policy, it's not the end of the world. What you need to ask is, do they cover tail insurance? Tail insurance is a kind of insurance that covers your tail, covers you for lawsuits that happen once you leave. And so if you work at an employer and they only have claims made policy, ask about tail coverage. So those are some points that I want to make is one, everyone needs malpractice insurance. And two, that there's two main types. And you need to figure out which type you have.
Yeah. I love that as a basis of this conversation of the type of insurance because it's really important. We've talked about disability insurance, we've talked about life insurance, and what we've learned is that there is variation, and really where the gold is in the definition of the insurance. As I was looking through the insurance company that provides our malpractice insurance, and when I say our, I mean my husband, but and one of the things that I found interesting is even under their definition of claims made insurance is that this insurance company will allow you to cover claims that are made, say, before you even had this insurance company, because it's called prior acts coverage. So if you are someone who is transitioning jobs or you're moving from an employer that covered your malpractice insurance and now you're getting your own malpractice insurance, it would be prudent for you to ask, do you actually cover prior acts coverage if I get a claims made policy? Because at that point, a tail coverage may be unnecessary. So, really making sure that you really understand what the definition of insurance coverage and ask about prior incidents or claims that may be made for before you were insured with a company. Now, Lisha, when you think about tail insurance and how much you would have to pay for tail versus occurrence based, do you have any metrics of how much things should cost and how much people actually need?
That's a great question. I personally have not looked into the cost of tail insurance because it's always been included at every place that I have worked. However, I can tell you some ballpark figures and that some specialties pay a lot more for it than others. And that, as you can imagine, are the specialties that are more likely to be sued and specialties that have a higher, I don't know the proper term, but it's kind of like a higher or a larger range of statute of limitations. For example, OBGYN and neurosurgery, they pay the most for tail insurance or for malpractice insurance in general. Neurosurgery, they pay a lot because the risks of some of those procedures are so high that patients are a little bit more likely to sue them. And so that's why their malpractice insurance, including tail, is high. OBGYN, it's high because of the statute of limitations, right? If they deliver a baby, then technically the baby that they delivered has up to 18 years to sue them, if I'm not mistaken. And so, because the patient has so long through which they can bring a lawsuit, that coverage is a lot more expensive. And so, OBGYN neurosurgery, pretty high. Emergency medicine and general surgery, or a lot of the surgical specialties, are sort of middle of the road. And then, primary care and psychiatrists, actually much lower to be sued, partially because they have relationships with their patients. And a lot of the studies show that patients don't tend to sue doctors that they like. And so even if one of those physicians makes a quote unquote mistake, patients are less likely to sue doctors that they have a longstanding relationship with and that they actually like. Not saying that patients don't like doctors in other specialties. I'm just saying that because of the longitudinal relationship in those specialties, I think it makes it less likely for them to be sued. You're laughing over there. I wasn't trying to offend anybody.
No, yeah, I hear you. And the stakes are higher. The risk is higher depending on what you do. It's really interesting that you bring up this piece about litigation and also the relationship. One of the hats that I wear at my employer is to teach residents about patient safety and quality improvement. And there is an ACGME requirement that the residents actually have in their curriculum error disclosure. Because when we're thinking about litigation, it's not that you provide perfect care. We're human and we know that we make a lot of mistakes. There's that Institute of Medicine report in the 1990s that many of us have heard about, To Err is Human, that really quantified the number of mistakes that physicians make. And it falls very close to renal failure. We are like third and fourth and the leading cause of death, which doesn't make me feel good at any point in time when I think about like, and we're not doing a great job, right? And so when you're thinking about litigation and malpractice insurance, or even just the risk of litigation, is not that you're perfect, because no one is perfect. What they want to understand is that, are you meeting that standard of practice? And thinking about your relationship and error disclosure, when you make a mistake, how do you reveal that to the patient and their families? And studies have shown that when a healthcare professional discloses a mistake to the family, then they are less likely to go and sue because they feel and they understand that you are human. And so it helps to kind of restore that therapeutic alliance. Now, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to actually disclose that you've made a mistake because maybe you don't even know, it's not brought to your awareness that you've made a mistake. But when you have, if you're a practicing nurse, nurse practitioner, PA therapist, physician, whoever you are, then we know that studies show that there's fewer litigation when you disclose the error. And there's a proper way to do that we're not going to talk about on this podcast, that there's a way to do that. But just disclosing that error and disclosing it properly will allow patients to have a better rapport with you.
Ooh, Brittany. Okay, this brings a question to mind. I'm going to ask you a question. As a hospitalist, especially as a hospitalist who works at a teaching center, are you team document everything or are you team less is more when it comes to lawsuits? And the
Mm,
reason why I'm asking this is because a lot of the people in the team document everything feel like, okay, if I document my entire thought process and give my rationale for why I did do something or didn't do something, then it's more protective, right? There's less likely that I miss something. There's less likely that someone could say, like, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that, right? So their team document everything, document, document, document. And there are other people who are team less is more. And their rationale is because they say, if you document every little thing, there's more things for lawyers to pick apart. You say a patient had fatigue and review of systems, and you didn't fully work up the fatigue. And then 2 years later, the patient has cancer. Someone could say, well, you didn't work that up. Or if someone tells you they have chest pain and you know it's not angina, but you didn't fully, as long as you put it down there, then maybe someone could say, oh, well, you missed something. And so some people feel like just document just enough. But if you write down every little thing, then it's more for lawyers to pick apart. No one's advocating that you lie or like fail to disclose important information. But that has really made me think because the people that are team document everything, I feel like I've met more doctors that are in that camp versus the people that say less is more are generally people who have spoken to lawyers who say less is more. So I'm just curious as to which side of the camp you
mm.
fall under as someone who potentially has higher liability because you're teaching, even though I know you're at a teaching hospital.
Okay, so let's just take documentation and separate that conversation a little bit from like the litigation piece. When I'm thinking about patient care and patient safety, documentation affords us the opportunity to reflect our thought process of what that patient complaint is, which is imperative for the next person. As a hospitalist, I work shifts. So I'm working maybe for 7 days straight for sometimes 21 days, but we try to avoid 21 days, right? And then oftentimes I'm inheriting a patient. And when I see that there's a problem on the list, and it's poorly documented, for me, it provides a lot of mental burden, cognitive load of trying to process because this patient still has this complaint that I need to solve in order to make sure that I'm providing a level of care that meets the standard of practice. So, documenting your thought process allows for that continuity, it allows for quality of care and patient safety. I think it also, of course, we need to document for billing purposes, right? And it just allows us to know that we've been thoughtful about that patient and to be very protective of the care that we're delivering for continuity purposes. Now, from a litigation perspective, my husband actually reviews cases as a consultant for cases that have gone wrong. And I hear him talking, of course, I don't know all of the details, because of HIPAA, but I hear him talking about, well, wait, why was this person on this dose of medication and then you just increased it by 4 times or 3 times? Or why are they now getting this increase of prescription or now having this therapy and treatment plan? And when you do not explain your thoughts, you leave it up to someone else's interpretation and question. And in my mind, that offers more opportunity for litigation than clearly articulating what you're thinking, because we've all been there when I think the chest pain is a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs, when it's actually an MI, but those diagnoses are very similar and there's a lot of overlap. And as long as I explain my thinking and someone can substitute themselves into these cases where, oh, I can see how a doctor could make that decision based upon this information that was presented to them. If they pass that substitution test, that standard of care, standard of practice test, then there's no grounds for litigation at that point.
Okay, so your team document everything. That's your answer.
Yeah, that was a long explanation of team
No, no,
document.
no. It was interesting for me to hear because that's sort of how I am. I try to explain everything. And a lot of the reasons why I'm explaining everything is not necessarily because I think I'm going to get sued, but because so I can remember where I was going with this. Because I also work at a teaching institution, but I am teaching residents in the clinic setting. So it's a little, I think, slightly lower stakes. I mean, I guess depending on how you view it. But even for myself, like when I'm seeing a patient that maybe a colleague saw before me, it's helpful for me to understand what was their thought process? What did they really think was going on? What is their next step? And it's one of the things that I try to get my residents to do is not only manage the patient, but if somebody is coming after you, which happens a lot of the time in a residency clinic, would they understand what the next step is? Make it easy for the next person. And so that has generally been my philosophy. But I can tell you now, I've worked in different settings, especially urgent care settings and things like that, where there is a lot less documentation. In fact, I remember one of my first shifts at the urgent care, people were like, why are you writing such long notes? Hey, click here, click here, click here. And I don't know if it was from a lawsuit standpoint or what, but it's really interesting to hear these different perspectives. I do want to say one thing about malpractice insurance because we know that it's necessary. Obviously, we talked about how occurrence policies are more comprehensive, but claims made policies may be more common. And that if you have claims made policy, be sure to ask about tail coverage. One of the things that I want to bring up is that some institutions have claims made policies and they do not have tail coverage and you're still protected. And I know that sounds confusing, so let me explain. Some institutions will self-insure. So, for example, when I worked at the University of California in Los Angeles, they self-insured, or I guess the state self-insured. So, like, we didn't need tail insurance and we were still covered. I remember when I was at Emory, I remember our attending saying, a patient can't sue an individual doctor, they'd have to sue Emory as a whole, or something along those lines. And so, depending on what setting you work in, especially at a lot of these academic institutions or state institutions, you may still be covered. Sometimes some of the people in your human resources department may get some of the terms confused. That's happened to me where I've asked about things and people weren't sure. So I would encourage you, if you don't know what kind of policy you have, to really, one, verify that you have malpractice insurance and that it's good coverage. Verify what type, occurrence policy versus claims made, and then ask if they cover tail insurance. And they may say, oh, yeah, of course we have tail insurance. Or they may say, nope, we don't have tail insurance. Or they may say, we self-insure for tail insurance. And so those are things to ask about for all of my folks who are working in private practice or thinking about private practice. The tail insurance may be a little bit more nuanced. At some private practices, they may not automatically cover tail insurance, or it may be a tiered system where the longer you work for that private practice, the higher the percentage of tail insurance they will cover. At other practices, they will say that you're responsible for purchasing it. At other practices, it really depends on why you leave the organization. Like if you are fired with cause, they won't cover it versus if you were fired without cause, they will. And so these are some of the nuances and things to really think about as you are looking at your malpractice insurance coverage. But I want to transition really quickly from malpractice insurance to umbrella insurance. So another way to protect yourself is not only from lawsuits at work, but also from lawsuits outside of work. And I find that this is an area of protection that some doctors may forget about, right? It's not that you don't want to be protected. It's that maybe you thought you were already protected or didn't realize that you needed to add on protection. But that's what umbrella insurance for. It protects you from civil lawsuits, right? Your teenager drives a car, gets into a car wreck and hits the CEO of some company and they sue you, your umbrella insurance will cover it. Your dog runs off the leash and bites your neighbor and your neighbor sues you, your umbrella insurance will cover you. You host a dinner party and someone slips on ice, realizes that you're a rich doctor and wants to sue you, your umbrella insurance will cover you. And so your umbrella insurance covers you from lawsuits outside of work. And the interesting thing about umbrella insurance is that you usually buy it from your car insurance company, which, I remember
Mhm.
initially I thought that was strange, but you buy it from your car insurance company. And so what happens is in order for you to purchase umbrella insurance, you have to at least have a certain amount of protection on your car insurance. And what most doctors may realize, as I realized when I purchased umbrella insurance, is that most of us just have the standard policy, right? We buy a car, we get car insurance, we say, what's the general policy? And they add that on. Well, that is not sufficient. You actually have to increase your liability protection on your car insurance policy in order to even be able to purchase umbrella insurance. But once you do that, the umbrella insurance is actually pretty cheap. I think I pay like $10 a month or $20 a month for like millions of dollars of coverage. And so it's pretty cheap, but I want people to know that you have to actually increase the coverage on your car insurance policy because that's actually how you buy the umbrella insurance.
Yeah, we've had this experience recently where I just increased our umbrella insurance to like 3 million. Each company, they have the tiers of how much you can get and how much it will cost and how much you will actually qualify for. So it's really interesting going through this whole process. When we talk about umbrella coverage and how important it is, I think oftentimes we don't think that we need the million, 3 million, 5 million, et cetera, to cover us. It's so interesting because you all know that my car is old. It has very few miles on it. I drive a 20-year-old Saturn Ion and it has 90,000 miles on it. And one of the reasons why I drive is to, of course, get to places more efficiently and do it in an expeditious way. But there are many reasons why I don't drive. And it's really interesting because Brooke, she's like, Mommy, why do you always pick me up on the bus? Or why are you always running everywhere instead of driving? And part of that is because of the environmental health benefits, et cetera. But I think because of the risk, I have gotten into a car accident when I was a resident and it was just a fender bender. I mean, it was like really no damage to their car, but I had my white coat on the back of my driver's seat. And they saw that I was a physician. I mean, it's still a resident physician, but they tried to go to their insurance company, say that I hurt their neck, they required surgery, all of these things. And it was more of a nuisance because I had taken pictures and had the police come out. And so I had to do this whole explanation thing. But at least I knew that I was protected because I had some umbrella insurance, right? But it was very frustrating experience. So all of that to say, you want to make sure that you're covered because yes, people will try to sue you when they see a white coat or see that you are a physician, and it will at least provide you peace of mind, even if they have no basis for that lawsuit.
Man, I didn't know that happened to you. You bought umbrella insurance as a resident? Wow.
Yes. Uh-huh. I had umbrella insurance at
Talk
the
about
yeah.
being proactive. So kudos to Brittany. The other thing I wondered is like, I know that you drive a very old car and I know that your husband drives the opposite, right? Your husband's got the luxury, vehicle with the lights. I think he's got a Benz or something, right? And you've got the old Saturn, right? I know that's a choice that you've made. If you wanted a fancy car, you could totally get a fancy car. So this is an active decision that you've made. My question is, did the umbrella insurance vary in costs when you had an old car, or I guess for your old car versus for your husband's newer car? Like, how did you guys work the umbrella insurance?
Everything is shared, right? So we have one policy. There's not an umbrella coverage for both of us individually. We have like kind of one family policy. So they increased thresholds on just our car insurance to the maximum amount. And then in addition to that, we have the umbrella coverage for both of us. But it's not necessarily that it's individual that we pay separately. It's just that we're kind of both covered under this insurance policy because both of our names are on everything.
So you had to increase the liability protection for both cars, the old car and the new car. Okay. Do you feel like I guess maybe you wouldn't know, but do you know if you were charged more because you have an older car? Or maybe you were charged more because your husband has a luxury vehicle? Like, I just wonder if the cost of umbrella insurance is different based on the kind of car that a person has.
I don't think so. I will have to go back and review our policies from when we had my husband's old car to now. But at least in my purview, so part of it is I'm not going to be comparing apples to apples because we've increased our amounts of umbrella insurance since having the new car. But I don't think it's based upon the age of the car at all.
Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. And then, for our audience, if you've not purchased this is really easy to purchase. You can just call or email your car insurance company, State Farm, Geico, Progressive, whoever you have. And you can say, hey, I want to purchase umbrella insurance. And they will tell you, okay, in order to purchase umbrella insurance, you need to increase the protection on your car insurance. And then they'll ask you how much umbrella insurance you want. And usually umbrella insurance is sold in increments of, I think, $1 million, $1 million coverage, $2 million coverage, $3 million coverage. And it's really cheap in that usually you can get it for like 10 or 20 bucks a month for every million, I think, something along those lines. So you can pay 20 bucks a month for like a $1 or $2 million policy. And so it's actually not very expensive at all. Part of the reason is a lot of people don't end up needing to use it. But of course, you may be that one person that does get sued and does need to use it. And so given how cheap it is and how protective it can be, it's definitely worth getting, especially if you are a physician or some other high earning individual. Versus malpractice insurance, Brittany, I'm not sure, but I don't think a lot of professions outside of medical professions end up buying malpractice insurance. I want to say it's just a health professions thing where it's just things that, physicians or dentists or, podiatrists or whatever will get I'm not sure about other professions, but umbrella insurance is definitely something that a lot of high earning people, regardless of your job, likely will need and should consider getting.
Yeah, I think my parents actually have umbrella insurance. So I think it just depends on how you feel, how much coverage you have, and how much you make and how many assets you have as far as like what could be garnished in the case of a lawsuit. And then the only other thing that I want to add for malpractice insurance is just know that you don't have to do this alone. Like there are malpractice insurance agents. We did not bring a insurance agent onto this episode, but there are independent malpractice insurance agents who can find and shop your malpractice insurance to help you to understand how much it is for your state, how much you will need for your profession, and what the risks are, help you to understand what claims made versus occurrence based policies and what you need and how much you need. So I just want you to feel empowered. You know, a lot of my coaching clients are nurses. If you are a nurse, there's that big case that happened where the nurse had like 3 years of probation. And so if you are someone who's like 1099, a travel nurse, or working for various companies, then you can go to an independent broker, someone who has your best interest at heart, and have them to help you to work through this process to make sure that you have the appropriate coverage. And also to understand that once you cover yourself, when things change in your life, you need to go and actually update and make sure that you have the appropriate coverage. I had to do this with our disability insurance, had to do this with our life insurance. And so the malpractice insurance is another thing that when you have transitions in your career, your practice, your life, you want to make sure that you're covered appropriately. And how you can have that assurance is by getting some professional help.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I guess just one last parting word of wisdom in regards to malpractice insurance is it's not only important to have the insurance, it's also important to decrease your liability, decrease the risk that you could get sued. And one area that a lot of physicians will ask me about is, should I precept residents? Should I teach medical students? Should
Mhm.
I supervise non-physician providers? And I think that's a personal decision, but I do want people to be aware of the increased liability that some of those roles may bring. I think that sometimes physicians think, oh, it's just easy money, it's free money, I don't have to sign off on all the charts, I don't have to look at all the patients, and I'm still getting paid. But realize whenever you are in a supervising capacity, a supervising role, that you are responsible for those patients, whether or not you see them yourself. As someone who is teaching faculty at a clinic, I actually do teach med students and I precept residents, but that's covered under the malpractice insurance at my job and my facility. And I know that I'm fine there. I personally feel a lot less comfortable supervising non physician providers simply because I don't want to be sued for a patient that I never saw. Versus when I am precepting residents, I can actually see all of the patients. If I have a question, something doesn't quite add up to me, I can just go lay eyes on the patient and make my own judgment call. One of the reasons why I'm hesitant to do that same thing for non-physician providers is because I wouldn't be able to see all the patients, right? You only sign off or see maybe 10% of the charts.
Mm.
So there's a large portion of the charts that I'm not able to see. And I trust myself, but I don't necessarily feel comfortable increasing my liability for someone else's decision making. Now, I may be alone in thinking that, right? That's just my own personal preference. And what you decide to do is your own personal preference. But I just want you to be aware of other situations and roles that may increase the likelihood that you could get sued, and try to do your best to maybe either avoid those roles or just make sure that you have adequate insurance.
Oh, Lisha, that's a great part. And I think in the role of supervision, but also in the patient load, sometimes when you go to a place and yes, they're going to pay you 300 grand as a hospitalist, but you're taking care of 20 patients. I personally could not take care of 26 patients and provide the level of care and attention that I would desire to my patients. So when things are becoming unsafe, I think that that's an opportunity for you to either say to your administration, hey, I cannot practice in this setting and provide quality care to my patients. And that's something of the utmost importance to me, just for just the patient's lives, but also for your liability. And when you're pursuing careers, if that is an opportunity where they say, okay, you're going to have to see this amount of patients, or it's an RVU based, just know that sometimes the amount that you might generate in income may not offset that liability. And so it's always going to be a calculation that you want to consider. This is a factor that you want to consider in that calculation. And that's the same for nurses, therapists, whatever you're doing, making sure that you're able to provide safe care in that setting. At any point when the safety is being questioned, then you want to do something about it or start to think about transitioning careers.
Yeah, yeah. So if you are in healthcare, definitely make sure you have malpractice insurance. Regardless of what job you have, if you're a high earning professional, you may want umbrella insurance. And now we're going to transition to one of our favorite segments, which is our fun money segment. All right, Brittany, you know that I've been spending a crap ton of money during my time in Paris, including this designer purse, luxury experience, Michelin star restaurant thing. So I am currently in the I need to accumulate some more money phase. So I'm trying to not spend as much. So I'm curious, what are you spending your money on?
I have to think about this because one of the things that since we've moved into this new home, I am trying to create more peace in the home. And so I have suppressed my spending, but we're taking family photos. KJ, my youngest, he's 3. And the last time we took family photos was unfortunately when he was about 8 months. So he looks at the pictures and he knows that that's him, but he doesn't look the same. So it's like, Mommy, come on, let's take different pictures with me. Why don't I see me on the wall? So we're actually going to be taking some family pictures coming up soon. And I have too many clothes. My hangers are squished in there and kind of crooked. And so I was like, okay, I need to get rid of some dresses or don't buy anything. But then we taking family photos and I want to buy a new dress. So I'm going to buy a new dress. And I have a couple of things saved in my cart that I haven't purchased yet because I'm still trying to coordinate everybody's outfits. But that's what I'm spending money on, some outfits for our family to take family photos.
That's so cute. Okay, now I have a question for you. Are you all like the whole Christmas card family? You take a photo, whether it's professional or not, and you make the Christmas cards and you send out the Christmas cards each year? Or are you not the Christmas card family? I gotta know.
Typically, we are the Christmas card family. Last year, I could not get my act together and we did not send a Christmas card.
That's a relief for me.
So then I was thinking
Hold on, that's a relief for me because I was wondering, did I just not make the Christmas card cut list? Because I didn't get a fun. And I was like, man, maybe we're not as close as I thought we were. This actually gives me some relief. Thank you, Brittany.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny because I'm a little bit of a hoarder, but I know that I need to declutter. I'm digital declutter. I need to declutter this home, declutter the toys because it gives me more peace when I walk into an environment and everything is organized. So it's really interesting because as I was decluttering, I found some old Christmas cards that were returned because I wrote the address incorrectly or whatever was the issue. And I was going to hold on to those things. I'm like, no, let me just throw that away. Just throw that away. So Lisha, if a Christmas card does not come this year, do not hold it to my heart. Maybe I just wrote the address incorrectly on the Christmas card. It got returned and then I just stashed it away and didn't resend it. So I did not get my act together last year. So we didn't send out any Christmas cards. But for people who do send Christmas cards, I appreciate receiving them in the mail, but there are so many. You can't display all of them. You can't, it's almost like it comes in the mail. I see it. I appreciate it for that moment and then I throw it away. I think I might transition to a Valentine's card or hey, here's an update on our family card because sometimes it's just overwhelming receiving so many Christmas cards that there will be a greater appreciation if somebody just got a picture of us in the mail in February and they were excited to see it instead of them just saying, oh, just another Christmas card.
So I know some people who display their Christmas cards, probably depends on how many they get on a yearly basis. Another idea, Brittany, is to create a scrapbook. Why don't you create a scrapbook and put them in a little book? So then you still have them and you can see oh, your friend's kid as they've grown up, but then it maybe takes up less space than trying to display everything. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea. Or maybe you take a photo of the Christmas card and you upload it to a digital album so you can still display them without having a bunch of cards everywhere. I know some people will put them on their refrigerator. You don't like clutter, so maybe that's not your thing. At least for the year that I get the Christmas card, I display them. I like to display them on my fridge or around my home. It just makes me happy. I love seeing love. I love, happy families and cute babies and cute kids. And I don't know, I'm that nosy person that I look forward to the cards, as you could tell. And I love it when people write stuff. Tell me what little Bobby's doing. What sport is he playing? How's he doing? His team went 5-5. I'm so happy for him. I love seeing it because everyone's all dressed up. They're smiling and it's a cute thing. So I love it. I'm one of those people that loves it. Now, please don't expect anything in return. That's what I have to tell people is this. I need you to do it out of the goodness of your heart. And so I'm not necessarily sending people photos of myself, but just, don't expect anything in return. But if you want to send somebody something, I'm your girl.
Well, we hope that this episode was helpful to you, and we look forward to meeting you in the next episode. Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you. Our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Mind Starter Kit now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittne Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Pradeep Bhado and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.